So I just watched Mank, and honestly, I thought it kinda sucked. Now, this is a tough one for me because I really like David Fincher. I think he's a really good director, and he's directed many movies that I've loved. Fight Club, Seven, Dragon Tattoo, Social Network. I mean, the guy has a really good record, a really good resume. So I really like David Fincher a lot. I think he's a great director. He has a very unique visual style. His movies are always really entertaining. I mean, the guy is a damn good director. But this movie was a piece of mediocre shit. And it's unfortunate, but that's what it is. And I see this movie getting all these Oscar nominations and, all these accolades. And it just goes to show you that movie critics don't know what the fuck they're talking about. So let's go ahead and start off with the pros, right? So first of all, the movie has good actors, and the actors do a good job, right? So you have Gary Oldman in the lead role playing Herman Mankiewicz, who is a screenwriter who wrote Citizen Kane, which is a very famous film, considered one of the greatest movies ever made. So the movie stars Gary Oldman as Herman Mankiewicz, and honestly, Gary Oldman is good. He's a great actor. He's very reliable, very consistent. Obviously, for me, he's Jim Gordon, but he's terrific in this movie. He's very believable as this sort of self-loathing, drunk guy who is very sort of down on his luck, almost despondent. He's believable. You buy him in this role. I really liked Charles Dance, or should I say, Tywin Lannister. The guy just has such a presence. I mean, when he's on screen, you just gravitate to him. He has such a commanding presence in the film. You're just drawn to him. As an audience member, you're just drawn to him, and I thought he was terrific. Also, you have Amanda Seyfried, who does a very good job bringing a humanity and a humor, and those three main actors, I thought, were all very good. Second of all, the movie is very well photographed. It's a beautiful film to look at. It's shot in black and white. It's just an easy film to look at. It is enjoyable on a purely superficial, if you're just looking at the images on the screen, you're like, okay, those are good images, but they don't really add up to anything. There are a couple of well-written scenes. There are a couple of moments where you're really sort of like, wow, that's an interesting situation, or there's a conflict. There's one scene, there's actually two scenes involving like dinner parties, and I won't get into spoilers, but there's one about halfway through and then one at the end, both involving kind of these dinner parties, and I thought both of those scenes were really well done, tense, and just engaging scenes. But on to the cons. This movie is incredibly boring. It is absolutely agonizingly boring and incredibly uninteresting. That's the one thing that really stood out to me about this film, is how incredibly uninteresting it is. I mean, from the get-go, the film never really pulls you in. You start off and the first 30 minutes or so, you kind of don't know what the movie's going to be about, and then it finally figures out what it wants to be about, and then what it wants to be about is not very interesting. This main character, Herman Mankiewicz, you can't help but wonder, is this guy should he really be the protagonist of a film? I mean, he's just not a very engaging character, and the movie feels very sort of inside baseball with regards to the film industry. And you would think that a person like me who's really fascinated by filmmaking, loves movies, would be interested in that kind of stuff, but it's just so incredibly alienating. If you aren't from this world, if you aren't of Hollywood, if you aren't of, these elite Hollywood filmmakers, I think you're going to be snoozing in this film. And that's another thing is, for me, I couldn't figure out, well, I guess I could ultimately, but the target audience of this film is very confusing to me, because it's not going to appeal to casual moviegoers, and it's not going to appeal to, mainstream general audiences who don't really know anything about Citizen Kane. I mean, with all due respect to Citizen Kane, and it's a great film, and it's considered one of the great movies, people nowadays don't care about Citizen Kane. I'm probably going to get, a lot of hate for saying that. Nobody cares about Citizen Kane. I don't think a lot of people are going to be going into this movie, absolutely on the edge of their seat to learn about how Herman Mankiewicz wrote Citizen Kane. So that's the thing, the movie's just incredibly boring, and you don't have to be this high art masterpiece. You don't have to be Stanley Kubrick, as long as you entertain your audience. I mean, look at the Marvel movies, look at Fast and Furious, it isn't high art, but it entertains you on a superficial level, and that's why those films are successful. This movie is not entertaining, at least for me, and so it completely failed on that first fundamental aspect of filmmaking, and that's to entertain your audience. And one last thing, the movie, in the second half of the movie, they sort of introduce this political message, and it just felt very sort of half-assed, almost like an afterthought, and I won't get into the details of it. It just felt like they just kind of threw in this political message at the last minute to make the movie, quote-unquote deep, and it just felt like kind of thrown in there and kind of underwritten and just not very well done. And so overall, Mank is a tough one. It's too well done, done in terms of the production and in terms of the acting and the photography. It's too well done to be a bad movie, but it's too boring and bland and uninteresting to be a good movie. So you're left with this weird, boring, mediocre piece of shit. So for me, this is 2 stars out of 4. I'm looking at all of these critics that are raving on this film. It got like 12 nominations or 11 nominations at the Academy Awards. I mean, it just shows you how full of it the Academy Awards are. And it makes sense to me that a film like this would get all these Academy Award nominations because, like I said, this movie is very much an inside baseball of the film industry. It really feels like the target audience of this film is Hollywood, right? Is people in Hollywood. And it almost feels like this feels like self-filleting. This feels like Hollywood self-filleting. And it's almost nauseating to watch at points. I don't want to get too negative. The movie isn't horrible. It's not the worst thing ever made. But the biggest problem with the movie is the boringness. I was checking my watch. How much longer is this movie going on? Oh my god, there's 30 more minutes. It feels like 2 hours. So, I can't recommend this film. And it's tough because, like I said, I like David Fincher a lot. But overall, this is a boring movie. And so I'm going to give it 2 stars out of 4. So thank you for watching my review of Mank. If you enjoyed this review, please like it. Consider subscribing to my channel. And thank you again for watching.